Hello. A few weeks ago, I made a video about why the first Disney Zombies movie is very racist against black people. It is. If you haven't watched that first video, I really highly recommend you watch that before watching this video. A lot of people in the comments of that video were very nice and asked what I thought about the second and third movies. Well, I rewatched them because of you. So thanks. So after my rewatch of both of the movies, here's what I think, in a nutshell. Zombies 2 is kind of complex. It's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't get there. And Zombies 3 is the most racist movie in the whole franchise, and it's crazy. But let's just start with Zombies 2, okay? So I will give credit where it's due. Zombies 2 makes a lot of strides in terms of the blind spots of the first movie. I like to think somebody involved in the movie woke up one day and thought, oh no. Oh God, no, we made them good at football and rapping and dancing. Oh God, we gotta change everything. So in my estimation, Zombies 2 improves on the first in three major ways. The first being that the propaganda in that movie is actually propaganda this time. You know, in the first movie, there's a cartoon about how the zombies are mindless killing machines. And then it turns out over the course of the movie, yeah, they'd really like to eat you if they had the chance. And that's pretty bad. But in this movie, they have an opening cartoon about the pioneers of Seabrook fighting off these mysterious monsters of the forest. And then it later turns out that that's not really how it went down. And there's a sort of histories written by the victors theme that, you know, that's an improvement. So number two, the overall message of this movie is a lot more clear. The first movie had this sort of vague moral that we should all accept and love each other, as long as them Z-words stay in line, and it's just baffling. But the second movie's moral is a lot more direct. It's you should be yourself and you shouldn't change who you are or who your culture is just to fit in with the majority. And again, good for them. And point number three, they finally made the zombies not just mindless murder machines when they go full zombie mode. The smart, socially conscious zombie even has this theory that the zombies are evolving past the need for Z-bands and they can control themselves when they're in their full rage monster. She even encourages the main character to control himself when he goes full zombie mode in the middle. And, you know, I think that's better. It's still not perfect because, you know, the zombie's true nature is still violent and it's something to be controlled and tamed and to get away from. But, you know, it's better than the sort of eugenics-y government-mandated sedative theme that was going in the first movie. So, you know, if the first movie was a crash into a ditch off the side of the road, the second one is trying to steer it onto the bumpy gravel path. It's not on the road to morality, but, you know, it's getting there. Also, side note, there's some pretty catchy songs too. I'll admit it. For children's pop in a Disney movie, it's not that bad. But all of these nice things about Zombies 2 is not to say that the movie is without its sins. And it will be judged for its indiscretions by way of the most embarrassing and futile art form ever conjured by the human mind. The YouTube green screen video essay. Green screen mode. Activate. I'd already been doing the green screen. Anyway, I briefly mentioned that the pioneers in the opening cartoon met a pack of mysterious monsters in the forest. Well, it turns out that those are werewolves in this movie. And really, they're the central focus of the whole story, to the point where it should just be called Zombies 2 Werewolf. And I actually get that to an extent. You know, the first movie solved racism already. You know, they learned their lesson. They made friends with the zombies. They went to their house at least once. We saw it on screen. So they can't just make the citizens of Seabrook forget everything they learned in the first movie in the first 2 minutes so they could have a new conflict. What they do is they very cleverly add a new race of monster, the werewolves, so that the citizens of Seabrook can immediately forget everything they learned in the first movie and just start being racist again. And if the zombies are supposed to be black people, seriously, watch the first video if you haven't, then you might be asking yourself, Who are these werewolves supposed to represent? Obviously, this is one of those racism movies that every monster has to be a race of people. Anyway, who do they represent? Well, I don't think I have to do a huge dissertation on this one. I'm pretty sure it's Native Americans, or I should say indigenous people in general. They're not exactly subtle about it either. They go into the fact that the pioneers come onto the land that is now called Seabrook, and they forcefully take it from the people who are already living there along with their precious artifacts, and then they banish those people to live in a little reservation off in the woods, and then just kind of forget about them. Sounds a little familiar to me, doesn't it? And now, the werewolves are mad at the citizens of Seabrook because their land and their artifacts were taken away from them. It's a little bit on the nose, on the snout. And if you're an overly sarcastic person who's not in love with the idea of people just being happy and making things without any kind of twinge of anxiety or self-doubt, like me, then you can have fun by participating in a little drinking game while watching this movie that I like to call Spot the Stereotype. All you have to do to play, if you are of age, is that every time a writer assigns a specific racial stereotype that has nothing to do with the mythology of the monsters in the movie, but strangely parallels their real-life counterpart, you take a little sip. Now, as for harmful stereotypes about portraying indigenous people in media, one of the big ones has to be portraying them as a primitive culture. And this has to be one of the most pervasive and really despicable trains of thought when it comes to indigenous people, because it lends itself to the idea that other cultures are more advanced or civilized, and that provides some kind of sick justification for the idea of conquest and colonialization. Right? We're not taking what's theirs, we're simply introducing them to what progress means for a society. By taking what's theirs, it's manifest destiny, baby. Bang, bang, bang. But it's more civilized. A pew, pew, pew. And is that trope present in Zombies too? Well, you bet both of your sweet little ass cheeks it is, because the werewolves live in literal caves with no remnants of technology whatsoever other than some weird magic projectors from a rock that they all have, a moonstone rock, that gives them their magic werewolf powers. This rock works as an EMP that blocks electronic devices from working, almost implying that the werewolves cannot interact with technology. They also keep saying that they're beasts from the wild, so, just a check mark, a big check, a drinks all around. Another very harmful stereotype would be to portray indigenous people as, in Disney's own words, savages. Now, is this present in Zombies 2? I don't know that I can really give it a full check mark. They're dicks all the time. They're constantly doing little acts of vandalism. They snarl at people. They try to intimidate people. They say we're mean and angry. But it's not to the level of the zombies in the first one who literally want to kill and eat people. I know I say that all the time, but that is the plot of the movie. The werewolves make a lot of jokes about ripping people's insides out and being beasts that can be tamed, but, compared to the zombies, they're pretty tame. In fact, big shocker, I know, they really throw out everything to do with the werewolf mythology, I think, to make them look less violent. They don't have a human form that switches to a wolf form at full moon. They just have these moonstone necklaces that give them their wolf powers, which are just sort of teeth, sharp teeth, pointy ears, and like a better sense of smell, I guess. They're just sort of stuck in this middle of an Animorphs cover stage, and they act like dogs a lot. They're furries, is what I'm trying to say, okay? They're furries. But they don't really do anything in the movie that makes them overly violent. Their bark is worse than their bite. Even though they do say that their bite is worse than their bark, and they say that they have razor sharp claws and they want to splatter people's blood. And there's a part where they literally say that we're fierce and we're savage. Man, I want to give it a check mark, but it's just not in the movie. Now, there is one more spot that stereotype answer that I personally found while watching Zombies 2 that I want to talk to you about today. And that is the portrayal of indigenous people as magical, mystical creatures of the earth. Now, there's actually a TikTok user by the name of Brett Moussois who makes very funny videos kind of playing off this idea. I recommend you check them out. They're really fun. In essence, the idea is that Native Americans, and in fact most indigenous tribes, have these cultural belief systems that they should be stewards of the earth and that they should live in harmony with nature, and that should dictate their lifestyle instead of the other way around. And that leads to portrayal of indigenous people in a lot of media as connected to Mother Earth in some sort of magical way. And does that show up in Zombies 2? Yes, it does, because the werewolves are literally only werewolves because of their magical moonstone that they will die without. Their whole quest of this movie to find the moonstone is based on a prophecy that's written on a cave wall. I mean, at least they didn't call it a blue corn moonstone, but now, on top of these stereotypes, they make sure they include their personal patented formula of entertainment in these movies of putting the lime in the apocalypse coconut and shaking it all up. There's less of that in this movie than in the first movie, but my personal highlight is the song right in the middle of the movie where the zombies are giving advice to the werewolves. Now, I can't play this song for copyright reasons, doubly so because it's kind of just a ripoff of Uptown Funk, but it goes a little something like this. Oh, do what they say, because these white people are crazy. Don't give them an inch, or they'll throw you in jail. So keep your head down, because we got a good thing going, and don't fuck this up for us, okay? Oh, great. Love the yogurt. And you know what? The zombies are right. Later in the movie, the normals have a colloidal silver gas bomb that they use as tear gas to disperse a werewolf protest. I looked that stuff up. It's like $7 per fluid ounce. The city of Seabrook will spare no expense to be racist. They will aerosolize silver just in case a group of minorities do a protest song and dance. But yes, in the song, the werewolves have a rebuttal about how they don't want to change who they are and they don't want to change their culture just to conform into the majority. And that's a good message. But I just think it's funny that the zombies are doing like a slick choreography and dancing and singing about staying in line and doing what you are told. Dare I say springtime for Uncle Tom? Okay, well, let's move on. Now, there's one final thing I wanted to talk about regarding the ethics of Zombies 2, and it's the white savior stereotype. It's not so much a stereotype of indigenous people, but it's just a trope that gets connected with indigenous people in movies a lot, like in Pocahontas, or Last Mohicans, or Dances with Wolves, which could have been another subtitle for this movie. It usually features a white person who's taken in by an indigenous tribe and is shown the wonders of their culture. And because of that, they elect to help the indigenous people with the problems that's usually created by the other white people. Now, the problems with this trope are a little bit more subtle than the other just outright stereotypes. On the one hand, it's a way to show in your story that people can cross cultural barriers and work together to fight for a common goal. On the other hand, some people do say that it is a storytelling tool that helps white audiences feel better about themselves while watching the movie because they can identify with the protagonist who's helping the indigenous people and not with the 99.99% of the rest of the white population that is actively trying to kill them all the time. And that sort of implies that white audiences wouldn't be able to empathize with an indigenous people who are just trying to help themselves, that they need some sort of avatar, and it just doesn't feel necessary for this movie. I really don't want to split wolf hairs about the ethics of it. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It just feels like I should take a drink when I see these werewolves take in the main white girl as one of their own. And it's a thing with these movies this whole franchise, that's kind of weird. I didn't go into very much detail about this in the first movie because it's not as relevant to the first film as it is to the other two. But it's in there. You know, in the first movie, the main girl, whose name is Addison, by the way, is the first person from Seabrook to accept the zombies for who they are as part of their community. And then she falls in love with the main zombie guy. So he gives her a tour of zombie culture by way of breakdance club. And, you know, that's a pretty standard broadening your horizons cultural storyline, whatever. But in Zombies 2, they just go all out and make her Monster Jesus. Yeah, that mystical prophecy that's on the cave wall of the werewolves, it says that they will find the great alpha with white hair. And guess who that is? That's right, it is the Great White herself. It's Addison. She is the literal chosen one that guides them to finding the moonstone that they need to live and will die without her guidance. In fact, once their moonstones start running out of charge, they show like they're withering away and wrapping themselves up in blankets and start coughing. And I'm sorry, that's a drink. That's a drink. The imagery is, I'm not going to get into it. So, because she's Werewolf Messiah, they spend the first part of the whole movie just trying to search for her and take them back to their cave. And then they have an extended song and dance about how she should join them because she is the great alpha. She is a werewolf. So in this song, they frame it as she should be tempted by the call of the wild so that she can express her true animalistic, natural, rugged self. And that's gotta be another drink. I'm still eyeing that second category. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's somewhere in there. It's definitely saying that indigenous people have this wild, animalistic nature to them. And at the end of the song, they encompass her in a huddle, and then all of a sudden, she emerges with one of their little fur skin furry outfits, and also a gigantic wig of braided, sort of vaguely tribal-looking hairstyle that nearly doubles the size of her scalp. She's really crazy to look at for the rest of this movie. Now, I am also not an expert in hairstyles, so I will not worry about splitting the wolf hairs on this one, but don't you think that someone in the costuming department would have a moment of pause, pun intended as well, and think to themselves, is putting this hairstyle on this white actress really, in this circumstance, appropriate? Because, I don't know, it just feels weird, you know? And it's par for the course for this whole franchise. She's constantly doing the ethnic tourism, trying to go each monster culture and fit in, be the special white. It's eat, spray, love. I'm sorry for the wolf puns. It just keep happening when I'm writing this. And by the way, she does fulfill the prophecy. She helps them find the moonstone. She says, look, it's right over there. Praise be to Addis, son of God. So, for a while, she thinks she's part werewolf because she's the great alpha from the prophecy. And then there's a shocking twist that it turns out she's not a werewolf. She's just their white savior. And that makes her very, very sad. Probably because she can't put she's 1/8 Native American on her college application. But it's best not to think about that. And maybe it is best not to think about it very much. I mean, the flaws in this movie are there, but they require more connecting of dots to really flesh them out, especially when you compare it to the first movie. Obviously, I'm not in the position to be the final arbiter about whether this movie is offensive or not, but I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that it is a kid's movie at the end of the day. And Zombies 2 has an obvious inclusive message, and I think it clearly has more self-awareness about their deranged monster minority plot device that is the premise of the whole franchise. So they try to retcon as much as they can to be less cruel about how they set up their monster minorities. Again, if the first movie is a fiery crash in a ditch, the second movie steers it over to the rocky shoulder of the road, which, if we're honest, still isn't great for the metaphorical tires on the metaphorical bus of this metaphor, but it is better. And you know what being better means in the Zombies movie franchise? It means it's less funny to me, and so it sucks and I hate it. And you want to know why I really hate this movie? Because it doesn't make any fucking sense. I could go on and on about how the writer of this movie did not put a single milliliter of thought into the plot of this movie. And so I will. Here I go. Okay, first off, nothing about these werewolves lines up at all. They say that most of the citizens of Seabrook, actually all of the citizens of Seabrook, thought they were just myths. They totally forgot that they were actually real people. So that means they haven't been in contact with anyone from the outside world in decades at least. Then, where are they getting their clothes? What are they eating? When they take Addison to the cave, there's a line where they say, "Oh, it's okay to be impressed." And you expect Addison to go, like, Jesus Christ, no. Is this where you live? All of your furniture is rocks. Everything's made of... You don't even have a door. You don't even have, like, running water. And where are your parents? There's a throwaway line about how all the elders are sick, but we don't see a single one of them. Maybe it's a Children of the Corn scenario. We just don't know. And another thing, when the City Council of Seabrook hears that werewolves exist, they immediately, and I mean within 30 seconds, reinstate all anti-monster laws, including the ones against zombies. So why do they do that? Those laws only affect zombies, who didn't do anything. They just said they saw some werewolves. It has no effects on the werewolves. They're not part of your city. You didn't even know they existed. What are the laws going to do? All it means is that they just make the entire town of Seabrook instantly forget everything they learned in the first movie, making that movie retroactively worse somehow. But then, after the werewolves appear at the school, they try to kidnap Addison, but when they get caught, they go, we're just here to join the school, I guess. And you want to know what happens? The football coach says that the Forbidden Forest is within the school district, and then Addison says, "Welcome to Seabrook High." And then they just are students. But what about those laws? What about those laws you just instituted? This would be the only scenario in which those laws had any kind of effect. Also, there's a principal to this school. The principal is in the scene 3 seconds before those werewolves show up, and she says nothing about them being able to enter the school. She's not even in the scene. She was right there. And the Moonstone bullshit. Oh, man. Get this, the Moonstone is what gives the werewolves their furry powers, right? And no disrespect to furries, I'm just saying these werewolves just act kinda like dogs, okay? They also try to squeeze in the little detail in their lore, their expansive lore, that the Moonstone is what powered the power plant that exploded and created the zombies. So they're now magically zombies, I guess. Also, how are zombies evolving past their need for the Z-bands? It's been like a year at most. Who is evolving? Are they mutating? Well, that's not how evolution works. And even if that all made perfect sense and I'm the dummy here, then why, I ask you, would the Moonstone that apparently provides unlimited free energy, the kind of thing that would bring about a post-scarcity utopia, be left abandoned under the old power plant? Because that's where it is. You're telling me, movie, that Seabrook's power plant drew infinite free energy from the Moonstone, and then after the incident that created the zombies, from user error, suddenly they switch back to coal? And if that happened, then why do none of the citizens know about the Moonstone? Like, that was only 50 years ago. Surely someone knows about the day where power to their house was free because of a magical rock, right? Someone had to work there, right? Oh, and by the way, the old abandoned power plant is the scene of the climax of the movie because the werewolves need the moonstone from the bottom of the plant, and the zombies want to keep the plant standing because it's a cultural landmark for them because that's where zombies were created. But the city wants to tear down the power plant because they're revitalizing Zombie Town and it's an old abandoned power plant, okay? So, when the werewolves show up to protest this and try to get the moonstone from under the plant, they shoot silver gas at them, like I said, to disperse their protest and have them arrested. Where did the government get this silver gas? They've been here for like a day. They also didn't know that werewolves existed. Also, when the kids have their big revolution song, the main zombie asks his dad to call off the demolition. And he does. And that makes sense because he's the foreman for the demolition. But the dad also says, "You're free to go, werewolves." Why does he say that? He can't say that. He's the demolition foreman. He's not a cop. He didn't arrest them. You know who could have said, "You're not arrested, they're free to go"? The mayor, who's right the fuck next to the dad, who doesn't say shit in the whole scene. It does not pay off having a working brain and watching this movie. Which is why the drinking game helps, honestly. But it's not even as offensive as the first movie, so it even fails at that. It can't even do that right. At least it ends on a happy ending and a wholesome, good moral. But wait, there's an epilogue. And the epilogue shows a bolt of light crashing from the sky into the earth. And then Monster Jesus' hair starts glowing. And then my mind starts racing because clearly they're teasing aliens for the next movie. And oh, wait. Oh, no. What if they're illegal aliens? Are they going to be Mexican aliens this time? For some reason, all the monsters are ethnic groups. Are they going to come down on a UFO shaped like a sombrero? And then it turns out they're hyper-efficient workers and they take all the jobs away from the Seabrookians? I'll just have to wait. Like a good, upstanding, tax-paying citizen, I waited for a full year for Zombies 3. And then forgot the plot of Zombies 3. And then I rewatched it just a couple days ago. And what I saw, I could not unsee. I had my drink in my hand. I had my Hispanic stereotype bingo card all mapped out in my head. And then I turned on Zombies 3. And the aliens come down. And all my expectations are shattered immediately. Because you've heard of ancient aliens, but have you heard of Asian aliens? Well, I have, because I've seen them. They come down in a ship, and immediately, and I mean from frame one, they bust into a K-pop dance routine. Also, one of the three main aliens, because there's only 3 people for each race in any of these movies, is the only Asian actor who has a major speaking role in the entire franchise. I wonder why that happened. And I am just reeling at this point. I wasn't prepared for Asians. I had to think of what I'm supposed to look out for because I know these zombies people by now. I know that they're not going to come out unscathed from this. And then I realized. It dawned on me. Because the movie starts out with another opening cartoon. And Zed is talking about how he wants to be the first zombie to go to college. And now there's Asians. I mean, aliens. No. Please, no. You keep watching the movie, and there it is. The time bomb that I was just waiting to go off. The moment that I had been dreading, but I knew that there was no outrunning. The aliens getting rolled into Seabrook because they want to win the cheerleading competition trophy. It doesn't make any fucking sense. But who cares? because anyone could be enrolled in this school at any time. We've already proven that. And then they show it. Zed checks his GPA for his class ranking so that he can apply for a scholarship to go to college. And yes, dear viewer, poor naive viewer, Zed, the zombie, cannot get into college because the Asian aliens are too good at math. It drops such a huge stereotype onto the metaphor table that it even adds another stereotype onto the zombies, because there's no way a zombie can compete academically with aliens, right? Do I even need to get into the rest of this movie? Because, sure, I could regale you with all the other Asian stereotypes they spew at you in this movie, like how the aliens have vastly superior technology and they look down on the primitive technology of us Westerners. Or how about that stereotype that Asian people are cold and lacking emotion? Happens a lot in media. Well, don't you know that the aliens in this movie actually have an emotion suppressing device so that they can live harmoniously? That's right. The aliens' whole society runs off of being non-confrontational because the greater good of being a harmonious society is more important than an individual being able to express their discomfort. That sounds familiar too, huh? How about their ship is an overbearing tiger mother who dotes on them and micromanages them, and they call it a mothership. It's their joke is to do the stereotype. I'm not making this up. Oh, how about the fact that Asian people are often thought of as the perpetual foreigners who are always somehow exotic and can never truly assimilate into Western society, no longer how long they've been here. And the makers of this movie decided to make the alien metaphor for Asians that literally come from another planet. But I don't need to get into all that. I can't even in good conscience joke about making a drinking game of this movie because I might wind up being liable for manslaughter. All you need to know is that zombies cannot get into college because the Asians are too good at taking tests. For no reason, by the way. They don't want to go to college. They just want the cheerleading trophy. They take the entire class in 28 minutes and they push him out of the running for college just for fun. They even break his PE records because they have anti-gravity bracelets, which is also cheating and no one cares again. You know, for a community that is always right on the edge of turning into a fascist ethno-state, they really don't give a shit about the rules in Seabrook. And you may be thinking to yourself, no way. There is no way that the main character of a Disney movie doesn't make it into college. Oh, he makes it, but he doesn't make it by way of his grades. He makes it because he does a big song and dance for the admissions lady of the college about what a great guy he is and the community loves him and he's great at sports. And that causes the admissions lady to take some action affirmatively, and he gets in on a special scholarship. Also, this girl should have been the one to get into college. She should have been the first zombie. She was always shown to be the smart one. She's the hacker. She's socially conscious. She's in the movie technically, but barely. They have her on a video call via this big robot thing. It came out in 2022, so I don't know if this was a COVID issue, but she shouldn't just be supporting him to get into college. She should be the one to get into college. But that would mean that they would have to rewrite their precious storyline about how Asian people being instantly at the top of the class is a fun goof, source of conflict. I don't know. It makes your head spin watching this movie. And it's almost unwatchable because for the whole first half of the movie, there's this distracting trumpet sound that comes from the heavens. It's the sound that foretells the second coming of Monster Jesus, because that is right. She is not just the great white savior of the werewolves. In this movie, it turns out she's actually part alien. But how could that be? Her parents are the white racists in all of these movies. It's another reason why the second movie doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would she think she's a werewolf? Her parents are clearly not werewolves. Well, it's because her grandmother was actually an alien scout that found paradise for all of the aliens after their planet was rendered inhospitable from all of the pollution. And apparently, Addison's mom is also an alien, and she knew the whole time, but was still super racist in those other two movies. Anyway, the grandma hid the coordinates to Shangri-La in Seabrook's most precious object. So the aliens think this is the Moonstone, and then it turns out it's not that. So then they think it's the cheerleading trophy, but no. You see, all along, the most precious object in Seabrook is literally Addison. You know who else was the physical embodiment of Earth's most precious object and whole presence itself leads the path to utopia? It's some guy that someone wrote about in the sequel to a book. That book was called Bible 2, Werewolves. And that man's name is Jesus Christ. Monster Jesus is reborn. So Addison finally gets her happy ending. Sure, she's been supported by a loving family and community, and she's super popular, captain of the cheerleading team, which for some reason cheerleading is more popular than the sports they cheer for. And she was the first person to ever be accepted into the zombie community. And yeah, she's the great savior of all of the werewolves, and they have a blood debt to her. But none of that matters, because she's a quarter Asian now. And that's so much more important than all of those other things. And she shows that by literally choosing to leave all of her family and her friends and her boyfriend behind forever after one day of confirming that she's an alien. But don't worry, she's not gonna leave, because they realize that the utopia was Seabrook all along, and that the aliens should integrate with all of the cultures, even if it's a little messy and emotional. And just to keep you informed, it also turns out that she didn't need to say she's 1/8 Native American on her college application, because guess who's the only non-alien who is confirmed to be accepted into college on the basis of their grades and not a scholarship? It's the girl who's a little bit Asian anyways. I don't even know if it's unintentional anymore, if I'm honest. The zombie girl isn't shown to be accepted into college, but Addison is, because she's an alien, I guess. How does it keep happening? I must be missing something, right? I don't even know what to think anymore. I've come apart. And the name of my undoer is Zombies 3, Werewolves 2, Aliens. Here's a quick summary of all the things that they put in their movies. Black people are violent but good at sports and rapping, but they can't compete academically with Asian people, who should learn to stop suppressing their emotions and stop being such an insular community and mix with the other races more. Also, indigenous people aren't good with technology like the Asians are, but they do have legitimate grievances against the white founder of modern cities. And that grievance is dropped immediately and ignored forever. But most importantly, if you want to get something done, if you have a cause that's noble and worth fighting for and dear to your community, for the love of God, get yourself an exceptional white person to do it for you. It works every time. It may also not work if you don't have one. We'll never know, because there is always a white savior in these movies. I'm pretty sure they're not going to make any more of them. Disney tries to make these franchises, but they usually stop after 3, High School Musical 3, Descendants 3. But I can always hope that there'll be a Zombies 4, Werewolves 3, Aliens 2 Mummies, where the mummies are Jewish and they call them bubbies instead. And they aren't wrapped in linen, they're wrapped in receipts, because that's how these movies are written for some reason. And all of that is just to say this. Zombies 2 and 3. Oops! You did it again. Thanks for watching.